The beacon started beeping at 2:07 hours. A faint pulse through static, soft, rhythmic, impossible. Inside the Tactical Operations Center Inn, Lieutenant Commander froze mid-sip, coffee trembling in his hand. "Sir, you need to see this." The tech's voice was tight, uncertain, like he already knew what it meant but didn't want to say it aloud. Leaned over the console, a thin green light blinked across the map. "Authentication code matches," the specialist whispered. "It's her beacon." Stared at the screen. The room went silent except for the hiss of electronics. "That's impossible," he said finally. "Lieutenant was killed in action 3 weeks ago." "I know, sir. I was at her memorial service." His eyes locked on the signal again. A blinking dot, alive, broadcasting from inside Iran. He felt something twist deep in his gut, a mixture of disbelief, anger, and something else. Hope, the kind of dangerous hope that can ruin a man. 3 weeks ago, he'd stood at a memorial podium, delivering words that still tasted like ash. He'd spoken about her courage, her trailblazing service, the first female Navy SEAL to see combat. He'd handed her folded flag to her sister and told her Leila had died with honor. They buried an empty casket. Now the ghost of Lieutenant Leila was calling home. "Get me JSOC on encrypted comms," ordered, his voice calm but his hands trembling. "And wake up the team." If she was alive, they were going to bring her home. Cut to black. The low growl of a C-17 engine fades in. 8,000 feet above the Iranian desert, the night air split open as 6 parachutes bloomed silently against the void. Master Chief Jake Phoenix checked his altimeter. Below him, the earth was nothing but darkness and wind. 5 other SEALs fell through the sky beside him, their bodies cutting through the air with surgical precision. They called it a ghost drop, high altitude, low opening, invisible to radar, invisible to the world. His voice crackled through Phoenix's earpiece from a floating command center in the Persian Gulf. "Predator drone confirms target compound. Minimal movement. You're green to proceed." Phoenix clicked twice in acknowledgement. No words. Words were for later. They all knew what this meant. Leila, the woman they'd buried, was alive somewhere below. For 3 weeks, she'd been locked inside a black site that didn't officially exist. Rumors said no one left that place alive, not even ghosts. Phoenix had served with her for years. He knew her rhythm, the way she breathed before pulling a trigger, the quiet focus in her eyes before a mission. She was the kind of operator who didn't talk much but never missed. She'd saved his life once in Afghanistan, spotted the IED he'd been seconds from stepping on. She joked about it later, said he owed her a coffee. He still owed her that coffee. 2 minutes to target. The team descended fast, the ground rushing up to meet them. Phoenix pulled his chute at 800 feet, black canopy snapping open like a whisper. He guided himself toward the dried riverbed that served as their landing zone, 2 kilometers from the compound. One by one, the team touched down. No chatter, no wasted movement. They buried their chutes, checked weapons, and slipped into formation. "Phoenix Joker, take point," his voice came through again. "Copy." They moved across the desert like shadows, 6 ghosts crossing a sea of dust. Through the night vision goggles, the target appeared. Low buildings, double fences, razor wire. 3 towers, faint floodlights, no insignia, no mercy. Overwatch took position on a ridge. 6 exterior guards, standard pattern, Reaper whispered through the radio. Phoenix adjusted his rifle, scanning the compound. Intel said Leila was being held 30 meters underground. The beacon confirmed it, a faint, steady pulse buried deep in concrete. Doc's voice broke the silence. 3 weeks in Iranian custody. She might not be walking. "She activated that beacon," Phoenix replied. "She's still fighting." At 2:48 hours, they reached the fence. Spectre, the demolitions man, knelt and placed a small charge, silent spark, then a hiss. The metal parted like paper. They slipped through the breach, crossing the open kill zone. And that's when everything went to hell. A lone guard, probably sneaking a smoke break, rounded the corner and froze, a cigarette burning between his fingers. His eyes widened. 6 figures in black stared back. He moved for his radio. One muffled shot, Joker's MP7 whispered. The man dropped. But it was too late. His finger had brushed the transmit button. A single strangled cry echoed through every radio on the compound. Then sirens. Lights. Chaos. Compromise, Phoenix hissed. We're going loud. Floodlights snapped on, bleaching the desert into harsh white glare. Shadows turned into soldiers, shouting, firing. Phoenix ripped off his NVGs and raised his rifle. Overwatch, clear those towers. Reaper's suppressed rifle cracked once, twice. Guards fell from their perches like marionettes with cut strings. The SEALs sprinted toward the main building under a rain of bullets. The air was alive with gunfire and dust, the smell of cordite and metal thick enough to taste. At the entrance, a squad of Revolutionary Guards poured out. Phoenix didn't think, just moved. Short, controlled bursts, one after another. The doorway became a funnel of death. Inside, he could already hear vehicles approaching, reinforcements. The plan was unraveling faster than any simulation. Tighten, blow the lower door, Phoenix ordered. A thunderous boom shook the hallway. The steel hatch splintered. They plunged into smoke and concrete. Below, the corridors were narrow and humming with fluorescent light, the kind that made everything feel more sterile, more inhuman. They moved fast. Joker and Spectre cleared the east wing. Phoenix, Titan, and Doc took the west. The signal on their tablets pulsed stronger. 30 meters underground and closing. They passed cells, rooms with chains and dark stains on the walls. Every step whispered what Leila had endured. Contact rear, Titan shouted. Gunfire erupted behind them. Sparks flew off concrete. Titan's machine gun roared in reply, echoing through the tunnels. Phoenix kicked open door after door, empty rooms, interrogation tables, the stench of fear. Then he heard it. A voice, faint, shaking but still defiant. I don't know anything else, but I know my brothers are coming for me. Phoenix froze. For a heartbeat, everything went quiet. That voice, he'd know it anywhere. Leila. He sprinted toward the sound, heart pounding. A reinforced door blocked the way, electronic lock flashing red. Spectre on me, he called. The demolitions expert arrived, setting a shaped charge. 10 seconds, the longest 10 seconds of Phoenix's life. Behind the door, muffled shouting, a man yelling in Farsi, furniture scraping. They were moving her, maybe executing her. The blast tore through the corridor, swallowing the world in smoke and heat. Phoenix was already moving. He burst into the room and froze. Leila sat strapped to a steel chair in the middle of a blood-streaked floor. Her face was bruised, one eye nearly swollen shut. 2 Iranian officers stood over her, one with a gun to her temple. Phoenix fired twice before thought could form. Both men dropped. He rushed forward. Leila, it's me, it's Phoenix, we're getting you out. Her head lifted slowly, one battered eye met his. Knew you'd come, she whispered through cracked lips. Told them, SEALs don't leave anyone behind. Doc was already beside her, checking vitals. Severe dehydration, trauma, but she's stable enough to move. Leila tried to stand. Her legs buckled. Phoenix caught her before she fell. I can walk, she muttered. Not today, he said softly. Doc gave her a stim shot. Her breathing steadied. Her hand, weak but steady, clutched Phoenix's arm. There are others, she rasped. CIA 2 of them, Eastern Wing, 3rd Cell Block. Phoenix keyed his mic. Joker, Spectre, check Eastern Wing, possible friendlies. A pause. Already found them, Joker replied. One can walk, one critical, we're bringing them. Phoenix exhaled. Leila was still thinking like an operator. Even broken, she was leading. Above them, the sound of gunfire grew louder, echoing down the stairwells. They were being closed in. His voice came through. Phoenix, you're about to have company. Reinforcements inbound. Hold for extract 7 minutes. 7 minutes? In combat, that might as well be forever. They started moving, Leila leaning on Phoenix, pistol in hand. Every step was a battle, but she refused to be carried. The corridors shook with explosions. Titan's machine gun barked somewhere behind them. Smoke filled the air. Shouts in Farsi grew closer. As they reached the main hall, Phoenix looked at Leila, pale, trembling, but her eyes alive. She was fighting every second just to stay conscious. And beneath the chaos, one thought cut through everything else. They buried her 3 weeks ago. But here she was. Alive. Bleeding. Unbroken. And she wasn't leaving without her brothers. She wasn't leaving without them. And they weren't leaving without her. Phoenix adjusted his grip, half carrying Leila as they moved through the haze of gunfire. Smoke curled like ghosts around the broken walls. Titan's voice crackled in his headset, low, strained but steady. Rear guard collapsing the stairwell. Buy you some time. The building shuddered from another explosion. Concrete dust rained from the ceiling like gray snow. Every step felt heavier than the last. Phoenix could feel her trembling against him, her breath coming in sharp, shallow bursts. 3 weeks of captivity had stripped her body to the bone, but not her will. That fire in her eyes, he'd seen it before in training, when she'd refused to quit during Hell Week. She was still that same warrior, just worn down to the raw truth of who she was. They reached a junction, 2 corridors, both crawling with enemy movement on their tactical feed. Left suicide, Joker warned. Right leads to the East Block, Phoenix replied. We cut through storage, hit the main stair. He could feel listening through the comms. His silence weighted with tension. Phoenix finally said, satellite shows 2 platoons converging. You've got maybe 5 minutes before you're boxed in. Phoenix didn't answer. There wasn't time to think, only move. They turned right. Gunfire met them instantly, short, brutal bursts. The team returned fire, shadows flickering in the muzzle flashes. Every exchange felt personal now, not mission, not orders, just survival. Spectre's voice broke in. Package 2 secured, both CIA operatives accounted for. One was being carried, the other limping between Joker and Spectre. Doc checked them briefly, his hands moving with the calm of someone who couldn't afford panic. Leila steadied herself on the wall. I can cover the rear, she said. Phoenix turned to argue, but her look stopped him cold. It wasn't pride, it was purpose. He nodded, short bursts conserve ammo. Her pistol coughed twice, precise shots in the dark. 2 guards went down before they even realized she was still breathing. They reached the service corridor, a long exposed stretch leading to the outer compound. Reaper's voice came through, tense. You've got a convoy inbound from the north, probably reinforcements. You need to move now. Titan hauled a desk into position, covering their retreat. Rounds shattered fluorescent bulbs, plunging the hall into flickering half-light. Sparks danced across the walls. Spectre, Phoenix called. How much demo do you have left? Enough to make some noise. Good, rig the eastern wall. We'll fake an exit east, then break west to the extraction. It was the kind of plan that only made sense when there were no other options. Leila watched him as he gave orders, her breathing ragged. You still think like a tactician, she murmured. "You taught me half of it," he said without looking back. Spectre planted the last charge. Fire in the hole. The explosion ripped through the facility. Concrete screamed. The eastern wall vanished in a cloud of dust and debris. Phoenix threw smoke grenades through the breach. "Move!" They bolted west, disappearing behind the cover of dust and confusion. Alarms wailed. Iranian voices shouted orders they couldn't understand but didn't need to. The language of chaos was universal. They burst into the open air. The desert night was no longer silent. Tracer rounds streaked overhead like angry fireflies. The compound burned behind them, flames licking the black sky. 200 meters to LZ, shouted over comms. Inbound 2 minutes out. 2 minutes. Phoenix could feel every second stretch. Leila stumbled but forced herself upright, gripping his vest. "Don't slow down because of me." "Not slowing down," he said, "just keeping you alive." An RPG screamed past, exploding against a sand berm. The shockwave threw them to the ground. Phoenix rolled, pulling Leila beneath him as debris rained down. He tasted blood, his or someone else's, it didn't matter. "Doc status." "Still here, little extra ventilation in my leg, but I'm moving." Titan unleashed the last of his belt-fed rounds, cutting down a line of advancing soldiers. "Out," he yelled, "I'm dry." "Keep pushing," Phoenix shouted. They sprinted across open ground, bullets chasing their shadows. He could see the glow of rotor lights on the horizon, salvation in motion. Then another blast, closer this time. Spectre went down, clutching his shoulder. Joker dragged him up without breaking stride. They reached the extraction zone, a flat stretch of desert scrub marked only by smoke beacons. And there it was, the rhythmic thump of rotors, louder, closer. 2 MH-60s swept in low, door gunners already spitting fire at the perimeter. The first helicopter flared and landed hard. "Go, go, go," the crew chief yelled, waving them aboard. Phoenix pushed Leila up first. Her body nearly gave out halfway up the ramp, but Titan caught her arm and hauled her inside. The rest followed, Joker firing bursts from the ramp until the last second. Titan climbed in last, limping, smoke clinging to his gear. "All aboard," Phoenix shouted, "lift." The shot upward in a storm of sand and noise. Tracer rounds streaked past, but the gunners answered with heavy fire. One Iranian truck exploded below, a final flash of fury. As the ground fell away, Phoenix finally exhaled. He hadn't realized he'd been holding his breath for hours. Leila was slumped against the cabin wall, her head tipped back, eyes half open. Doc was already working, starting IV fluids, bandaging wounds. One of the rescued CIA operatives lay unconscious beside her. Phoenix knelt down. "You're safe now," he said quietly. Leila's cracked lips curved in a faint smile. "Took you long enough." Joker's voice came from across the cabin, trying to lighten the air. "Yeah, well, we had to finish your memorial service first. Beautiful ceremony, by the way." Leila's laugh came out broken, raw but real. "My sister." "She never gave up," Phoenix said. "Told me she could still feel you out there." Leila's eyes softened. For the first time since they found her, she looked at peace. Outside the window, the compound shrank into the distance, a small inferno against the desert floor. His voice returned over comms, rough but steady. "Phoenix, outstanding work. Get them back to the baton. Medical team standing by." Phoenix nodded, though couldn't see it. "Copy that." The noise of the rotors filled the silence, a steady, comforting rhythm. Leila drifted in and out, murmuring words in Farsi, fragments of memories she'd had to fake to survive. Doc worked with calm precision. She was stable barely, but alive. Phoenix watched her face, remembering how they'd all doubted her once. The brass, the instructors, even some of the team. A woman in the SEALs, they said she wouldn't last a month. But she'd lasted longer than most of them ever could. 3 weeks in hell, and she still managed to light her beacon. He thought about the moment that signal had come through the static, the disbelief in his eyes. And now here she was, flesh and blood, scars and spirit. The helicopter shuddered slightly as they crossed into international airspace. They were safe, at least for now. Came back on the line. Phoenix, we're rerouting you directly to the baton. Medical priority for and the CIA survivors. JSOC will want to debrief the moment you land. Phoenix glanced at Leila. She's not giving any briefings until she gets real medical care, he said flatly. A pause, then's quiet chuckle. Copy that. You've earned the right to make demands tonight. Leila stirred again, voice thin but certain. Phoenix. He leaned closer. They were going to trade me, she whispered. 2 Russian contractors. They wanted intel, Syria, Iraq, all of it. Her words came out like broken glass. I heard them talking, joint operation, 72 hours. Phoenix's jaw tightened. Even bleeding, half-conscious, she was still gathering intelligence. He keyed his mic. Relay to JSOC. We've got time-sensitive intel direct from Lieutenant. Possible Iranian op within 72 hours. Copy, standing by for full transmission. Keep her stable. Leila's head rested against the cabin wall again, eyes closing. She whispered something barely audible, a phrase from SEAL training. Easy day, over. Phoenix looked out through the open ramp. The first light of dawn was creeping over the horizon, soft orange over the Persian Gulf. The world looked quiet, as if unaware of the chaos below it. Joker sat opposite him, silent now, watching Leila too. Titan cleaned blood from his hands, his face unreadable. Reaper's voice came over the radio, still covering their departure from his overwatch position. One last gift, he said, and a moment later, another explosion bloomed behind them, his final round igniting an enemy truck. Phoenix closed his eyes. He could almost feel the heat, even from miles away. That was the moment the war, at least this small piece of it, finally let go. Leila's breathing steadied. Doc adjusted the IV, giving her another dose of fluids. Her hand twitched, reaching for something invisible, maybe memory, maybe hope. Phoenix caught it gently, his calloused fingers brushing hers. You did it, he whispered. You made it home. Her eyes fluttered open one last time before sleep took her. I told them, she murmured, SEALs don't leave anyone behind. The helicopter banked toward the rising sun, the ocean catching fire in gold below them. They had crossed the line between death and life and brought her with them. For the first time in 3 weeks, Phoenix allowed himself to believe in miracles. Not the loud kind. The quiet ones, found in the simple pulse of a beacon that refused to stop calling home. The sky over the Persian Gulf was turning to gold when the USS Baton came into view. 2 destroyers cut the horizon in formation, their wakes trailing like scars across the water. The dipped low over the deck, rotors chopping the dawn into fragments of light. Medical crews were already waiting. Stood by the landing zone, headset still on, eyes locked on the incoming birds. When the skids touched steel, everything moved at once, medics rushing forward, stretchers unfolding, voices overlapping in urgency and disbelief. Phoenix jumped down first, his boots clanging against the deck. First, he shouted, she's critical. Leila was pale, lips cracked, her uniform shredded beyond recognition. Even then, her hand still clutched her beacon, the same small transmitter that had somehow survived torture, smuggling, and time. The symbol of everything they refused to believe was lost. As they lifted her onto the gurney, her fingers brushed Phoenix's wrist. Thank you, she whispered, barely audible through the noise. He squeezed her hand once. "Welcome home." They rushed her below deck, where the ship's medical bay had already transformed into a field hospital. Phoenix stood outside the glass partition, still in combat gear, still carrying the weight of the mission in his shoulders. Doc sat nearby, his leg bandaged but eyes alert, watching through the window like a brother who couldn't let go. Inside, surgeons worked fast. IV lines, monitors whispered commands. Leila drifted in and out of consciousness, her body here, her mind somewhere between memory and nightmare. Every sound, a door slam, a metal tray, made her flinch. In captivity, noise meant pain. Here, it meant life, but her body hadn't learned the difference yet. Phoenix watched her chest rise and fall, slow but steady. For the first time in 3 weeks, he allowed the thought, "We did it," appeared beside him. "You should get cleaned up," he said quietly. Phoenix shook his head. "I'll wait." The commander studied him, the dirt, the dried blood, the 1,000-yard stare. He knew that look, he'd worn it before. "You'll have time to process it later," said. "For now, JSOC on the line. They want everything she told you." Phoenix exhaled, rubbing his hands across his face. She mentioned a trade, group, some kind of joint op in 72 hours. His expression hardened. "That lines up with chatter we intercepted out of Aleppo, but we didn't have confirmation." "Now you do," Phoenix said. Within minutes, the med bay became a war room. Screens flickered with satellite images and intercepted communications. Every second counted. But even as generals and analysts argued strategy, Phoenix's mind wasn't on the maps. It was on her, the woman behind that glass, who'd endured the unendurable and still thought to warn them. He remembered something she'd said in Syria years ago, after a mission gone sideways. "Pain teaches you faster than comfort ever could." Back then, it had sounded like bravado. Now it felt like prophecy. Hours passed. The ship hummed beneath them, the rhythm of engines steady against the sea. When the med team finally emerged, met them halfway. "She's stable," the surgeon said. "Exhaustion, dehydration, multiple fractures, but she's going to make it." Phoenix didn't realize he'd been holding his breath again until he exhaled. Doc muttered something that sounded like a prayer disguised as profanity. When Leila finally woke, it was night again. Soft red light glowed through the med bay. Phoenix sat nearby, arms crossed, the exhaustion of years sitting on his shoulders. She blinked slowly, trying to orient herself. "Where am I?" "On the baton," Phoenix said. "You're safe." She looked at the IV line, the bandages, the oxygen monitor, then at him. "You came," she said simply. "Of course we came." Her lips trembled. "I wasn't sure if the beacon would reach. I hid it in the lining of my vest. They searched everything, everything." Her eyes went distant, replaying moments she tried to bury. "I had to make them believe I'd broken. It was the only way they'd stop." Phoenix leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "You didn't break," he said. She gave a faint, bitter smile. "Oh, I did, just not the part they needed." For a moment, neither spoke. Just the steady beep of the monitor. Then her expression shifted, that same focused look she wore in briefing rooms. "There's something you need to know. The Iranians weren't working alone." He frowned. "You said." "There were more. I heard names: Chinese advisors, North Korean cyber units. They're coordinating something bigger than a prisoner trade. They're building a network." Phoenix's blood ran cold. That wasn't just battlefield intel. It was geopolitical dynamite. He stood, motioned to through the window. "Get JSOC back on, now." Leila's voice was stronger when she gave her report, clipped, analytical, soldier's tone. Every detail she remembered turned into coordinates, patterns, targets. It was as if the pain had carved her memory sharper. When the call ended, lingered. "They're impressed," he said. "Hell, they're calling her intel the most valuable human source data in years." Phoenix looked back at the bed. "They don't see what it cost her to get it." Nodded slowly. "They will." Later that night, Phoenix returned to the med bay. Leila was awake again, sitting up slightly. Her face looked clearer now, the swelling reduced. "You're supposed to be resting," he said. She smirked weakly. "Resting feels like dying. I need to be part of the planning." He shook his head. "You've been through hell, let the others handle it." "I've been handling it for 3 weeks," she said. "Every day I stayed alive by planning how I'd get out, how I'd signal you, how I'd make them pay." Her voice didn't shake, it burned. Phoenix understood that kind of fire. It was the only thing that kept people like them alive. "All right," he said. "I'll talk to the Admiral. Maybe we can loop you in remotely." Her gaze softened. "Thank you." Then quieter. "You ever wonder why we survive things we should?" He frowned. "Sometimes it's not strength," she continued. "It's purpose. Maybe I'm still here because I wasn't done yet." He didn't answer. There wasn't one. Outside, the ocean stretched infinite and calm, a cruel contrast to the storm below deck. By morning, the Baton's war room was alive again. The intelligence Leila provided confirmed a joint Iranian operation across Iraq and eastern Syria. Their target, American forward bases and communication lines. It was the kind of coordinated strike that could reshape the region overnight. Admiral Sarah appeared on the secure feed, her face lit by multiple monitors. "What Lieutenant endured gave us the window we needed," she said. "We move in 72 hours. SEAL Team 3 will lead." Phoenix exchanged a look with his men. They were battered, bruised, exhausted. But every one of them nodded. "Always ready." Stepped aside to address Phoenix directly. "Master Chief," she said, "your team's rest window is 12 hours. After that, you redeploy." Phoenix hesitated, and she's still recovering, but she insists on being included in mission planning. Smiled faintly. Doctors aren't thrilled, but she's persuasive. 12 hours later, Leila was sitting upright in her hospital bed, a secure tablet propped beside her. She looked different, weaker, yes, but sharper. Every scar on her face seemed to have purpose. Phoenix and the team gathered in the conference room. Her image appeared on the screen, crisp and steady. "This is what I heard," she began, pulling up digital schematics. "Their commander's name is Victor X Group. He leads from the front, but he has a tell. He commits reserves too early, if we can bait that." Her briefing was precise, tactical, cold. But underneath, the professionalism was something personal. This wasn't about orders anymore. It was about taking back everything they'd tried to break in her. As the plan came together, Phoenix watched her on the screen. The same woman who'd been strapped to a chair days ago, now commanding an entire task force from her hospital bed. Even through the monitor, her presence filled the room. When the briefing ended, silence lingered. No one wanted to be the first to speak. Finally, Joker exhaled. "Guess the dead don't stay buried long," he said. Leila smiled faintly from the screen. "Not when they have unfinished business." Phoenix felt something shift inside him then, a strange calm. In war, victory often came at a cost you didn't see until afterward. But watching her now, alive, unbroken, he realized this mission wasn't just about revenge or duty. It was about reclaiming humanity, one act of defiance at a time. As the room cleared, placed a hand on Phoenix's shoulder. "Hell of a comeback," he said quietly. Phoenix nodded. "She's not coming back, she never left, we just caught up." That night, Phoenix couldn't sleep. He went topside, the deck cool beneath his boots, the sea stretching endless. Somewhere below, Leila was probably still awake too, planning, fighting ghosts that wouldn't rest. He looked toward the east, toward the desert they'd torn open to bring her home. A place where death had made room for something stronger. And for the first time in a long while, he whispered a quiet prayer, not for victory, but for peace. Because sometimes, the hardest battles aren't the ones fought with bullets. They're the ones you fight alone in the dark after the shooting stops. The sky over the eastern Mediterranean was a dark slate when the strike began. No fanfare, no speeches. Just the quiet hum of engines and the steady breathing of people who'd already accepted what might come next. Phoenix checked his weapon one last time. The mission briefing replayed in his head, Leila's voice coming through the secure line, steady despite the hospital background noise. Victor always commits his reserves early, make him believe he's winning, then cut the ground from under him. She said it like a surgeon describing an incision, calm, exact. And though she wasn't on the ground this time, everyone could feel her there, in the timing, the precision, the pulse of the plan itself. SEAL Team 3's voice came through the comms. You are go for launch. Phoenix looked at his men, Joker, Titan, Reaper, Spectre, Doc. Each tired and still ready. They'd brought a ghost back to life. Now they were going to finish what she started. The target was a joint Iranian operations hub on the outskirts of Syria. A fortress built from steel and arrogance. Intelligence from Leila's debrief had revealed its purpose: coordination, finance, and logistics for a network meant to destabilize every U.S. ally from Iraq to Jordan. At 200 hours, the first explosion split the night. Delta Force hit from the east, drawing the defenders out. Phoenix's team slipped in from the west, cutting power, severing comms. Exactly as Leila had predicted, committed his reserves early, rushing them into the open desert. That was their mistake. Within minutes, the followed, precision-guided, relentless. Fire lit the horizon. And for a brief moment, the entire desert seemed to hold its breath. By dawn, it was over. The Iranian base lay silent, black smoke curling into the pale sky. No American lives lost. An impossible victory, one born from the mind of a woman who'd refused to die in a concrete room. Back on the Baton, Phoenix stood on the flight deck as the last reports came in. Approached, headset still around his neck. She was right about everything, he said quietly. "'S dead. The ops dismantled. The intel she gave us will keep the region stable for months, maybe longer." Phoenix nodded, staring at the horizon. "What about her?" "She's something else," said, smiling faintly. "Doctors say she'll walk again. JSOC's already discussing commendations." He paused. "They're talking Medal of Honor." Phoenix didn't respond. He didn't need to. Some honors, he knew, weren't made of metal. 6 weeks later, the Oval Office was brighter than she expected. Leila stood in her dress whites, the faint scars on her face catching the light like threads of silver. Her uniform fit differently now, a little looser, a little heavier with meaning. The president spoke words she barely heard: courage, resilience, duty beyond measure. When he placed the Medal of Honor around her neck, the room filled with applause. Cameras flashed, generals nodded. But Leila's eyes searched for only one face. Phoenix stood at the back with his team, hands clasped behind his back, watching the woman they'd once buried stand taller than all of them. When her gaze found his, she smiled, small, real, the kind that said, "We made it." Afterward, she pulled him aside in a quiet corridor lined with portraits of other soldiers who'd come home in pieces and still found ways to stand. "I never thanked you properly," she said. "You don't need to," Phoenix replied. "I do," she insisted. "Not just for finding me, for not believing I was gone, for hearing me when no one else did." He smiled faintly. "You'd have done the same." "In a heartbeat," she said. Then, after a pause, added, "But next time, try to rescue me before they serve 3 weeks of Iranian prison food. That stuff makes hell week taste like heaven." He laughed, the first real laugh he'd allowed himself in months. The sound echoed softly down the marble hall, cutting through the formality like sunlight through fog. The team gathered for a photo afterward. Medals gleamed, smiles forced for the cameras. But behind every grin was something deeper, the quiet understanding of people who'd shared the impossible and survived. When it was over, Leila slipped away to the edge of the lawn, where the wind moved the flags just enough to whisper. She touched the small metal beacon that now hung from her neck, the one that had saved her life. It wasn't regulation to wear it, but no one had the heart to tell her not to. That night, she sat alone in the temporary housing assigned to her near the base. The medal lay on the table beside her, but her fingers lingered on the beacon instead. Its weight was familiar, real in a way the medal could never be. She thought about the 3 weeks underground, the cold concrete, the interrogations, the whispered prayers that weren't really prayers at all, just promises to herself. She thought about the way Phoenix had looked at her when he found her, not pity, not shock, just recognition. As if somewhere deep down, he'd known all along that she wasn't gone. Sometimes survival isn't about strength. It's about faith, not in gods or governments, but in the people who refuse to stop believing you're still out there. 3 months later, Leila was back in the field. Her first mission: lead a joint task force hunting the remnants of operations across 3 continents. Intel she'd memorized during captivity became the foundation for dismantling networks that had survived decades of shadow war. Her team called it poetic justice. She just called it unfinished work. Phoenix visited her briefing room once before her deployment. He watched her move between monitors, calm, decisive, unflinching. Same posture, same tone, but something had changed. There was steel now where flesh had once been. "You sure you're ready?" he asked quietly. Leila looked up, eyes clear, voice steady. "I've been ready since the moment they thought I was." He nodded, proud and maybe a little afraid, not of what she'd do, but of how far she'd go. As she turned back to her team, the light caught the beacon around her neck. It glinted for just a second, a small flash that seemed to hold every moment they'd lived through. Years later, the story of her rescue would become something of a legend, whispered in SEAL training halls, retold in low voices between drills. They'd call her the one who came back from the dead. But the real ones, the ones who'd served with her, knew better. She hadn't come back, she'd never truly left. Phoenix stayed in the Navy a few more years before moving into training. Every new class of SEAL candidates would eventually hear the same story, about a beacon, a woman, and a team that refused to believe what they were told. He'd start quietly, standing before the recruits with the same calm tone he used in the field. "We buried her," he'd say. "We folded her flag, we said our goodbyes, and then one night her beacon lit up from a place it couldn't possibly be." He'd pause, letting the silence stretch. "We didn't ask how, we didn't debate orders, we just went, because that's what we do, that's who we are." And when one of the trainees inevitably asked what happened to her, he'd smile faintly. "She became what every SEAL hopes to be," he'd answer, "unbreakable." Outside the classroom, mounted in the SEAL Team 3 ready room, the original beacon was displayed in a glass case. A small plaque beneath it read, "The only easy day was yesterday. The impossible day is just another day at the office." Phoenix visited it often, sometimes late at night, when the base was quiet and the world outside felt impossibly far away. He'd stand there, hands in his pockets, listening to the silence. Thinking about the moment the beacon's first pulse came through the static. The disbelief, the hope, the impossible. He thought about Leila, alive somewhere out there, still serving in shadows. Still wearing that same beacon, now burnished with time and meaning. He didn't need to see her to know she was all right. He could feel it, that faint, unseen signal, the one that says family's still out there. Because in their world, faith isn't words or prayers. It's action. It's showing up. It's answering the impossible call. And when you strip everything else away, the medals, the missions, the noise, that's what remains. Not the battle, not the victory, but the promise that no matter how deep the darkness, someone will always come. Because sometimes dignity doesn't speak.